There's talks between those that are doing the hard work and the lazy ones. Those that just sit and wait for someone else to grant their independence and freedom. And those that are taking bold steps, making bold policies, and carrying out bold actions to create solutions and liberate the people. Leadership, as I've stated several times, is the capacity to provide solutions, to solve problems, to innovate, to refine strategies, and give a people a compelling and a bright future. Leadership is the ability to improve the quality of people's lives. In the Ambazonian struggle that is filled with negative competition, the lazy ones have become the biggest obstacle in our liberation struggle. They argue, they fight, they condemn, even the things, even strategies, actions, and policies that will liberate them. We have good news. Come Water is complying. Come Water has paid 50% of the 10 million amber for their liberation tax. Come Water has a limited time to complete the payment of their liberation tax. They must comply. And every other organization, every other international enterprise in Ambazonia must comply with this new liberation policy. The Ambazonian people cannot, will not be the only ones to pay for the liberation. The multinationals that are reaping the rewards of our resources through Cameroon must pay their share. Come Water, which Ambazonians have renamed Amber Water, as of today, they have paid 5 million amber out of the 10 million for their liberation tax. So today, we will be talking with the Vice President of Governing Council of Ambazonia. Most of you know who Dr. JULIUS NYIH is. He's one of the most powerful Ambazonians. For an introduction, the Vice President of Governing Council of Ambazonia, Dr. JULIUS NYIH, is a scholar, an institutional and talent development specialist, an expert in human resources management. He's a lecturer in 4 universities across the globe. He's a lecturer in the University of Ireland, in Dublin. He's a lecturer in a university in Hong Kong, in China, and I think in Singapore or Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. So, Mr. Vice President, welcome to this episode of the interview, sir.
Thank you so much, PS, Mr. Lucas Ashu. I am delighted to be here today with you. I would first of all salute the brave warriors on Ground Zero. Good evening, Ground Zero, Ground 1, Ground 2. good afternoon, good morning, the diaspora, or anywhere you might find yourself. And welcome to this episode of the interview. I'm delighted to be here as I come once so often to depict policy changes or to depict new turns in our revolution. I don't come up quite often, but at least when I come up, I provide to the Ambazonian people, like I will do today, the rationale for the new policy, the outlook for our people moving forward and where we are as well, but also to clearly define what Ambazonians should be looking for in their leadership, but also to show Ambazonians who the real collaborators of Cameroon, agitators and spoilers are in the revolution. Once you bring up something that is going to give hope, something that is going to give legitimacy to Ambazonians to own their rightful land and resources, you get agitators beating around social media. Thanks a lot. We'll be talking more. Stay tuned. There's a lot of information to reveal. I'll also reveal to Ambazonian people our new strides in diplomacy. I'll also reveal to Ambazonian people the new impetus through policy team, but also our international partners that are now helping us to develop better policies to pursue this revolution to its critical end. And there'll be no negotiation. I'm sorry to say that.
Let's get straight to the point, Mr. Vice President. What made the Governing Council of Ambazonia to conceive the liberation tax policy, and what made the Governing Council of Ambazonia to announce this policy and made it public at this stage of the liberation?
Thank you for that question. To start with, I would give a context. This policy has emanated from at least 25 weeks of deliberation, critical analysis, counter-analysis, and adoption within the different structures of the Ambazonian Governing Council. And the last organ to adopt, as is usually the case with the Ambazonian Governing Council, was the National Council of the Ambazonian Governing Council. But also, I would like to thank the policy chief and the policy team within the organization. I think that is one of the biggest working departments, that they only work in the background, and then the president, the vice president, all of us come forward to take credit for it, but the real workers are behind the scenes. This policy in itself, it's a new turn, and I'll be talking more about that. It's a new turn in order to grant what we call a regulatory, a cohesive and normative institutions, a building within Ambazonia. It also places Cameroon on the watch list of Ambazonia, but also places multinational companies as well as Cameroonian companies on notice that you are not going to exploit Ambazonia again. You would pay for those other companies that have been paying. Remember, this is one of the biggest amber water, or Cam water as it used to be called. It's one of the biggest, or it's the watershed of all the big companies. But other medium-sized companies have been paying their liberation tax in the last month. And it is also the case that in the development of this policy, all of these companies were notified officially with a letter from the Governing Council that they will be liable to a nominal tax for now. While we move forward, our experts will design an equitable tax system for these guys to cover up during this liberation phase.
Is the liberation tax, is it only for Ambazonia Defense Forces to enforce? Or is it only for Ambazonia Defense Forces that will benefit from the liberation tax? Or this is a liberation tax that will empower all the defense groups on the ground based on where they operate?
As I said, this liberation tax has emanated from a series of discussions, a series of meetings, both within the Ambazonia Governing Council and beyond with our sister forces and other sister organizations, without going into much detail. This tax is not only going to benefit the Ambazonia Governing Council, but other sister forces and other independent forces that are truly fighting for the liberation of Ambazonia. But it is the case that when you pay the tax, you have to report whether you pay to a sister force, there's a single mechanism whereby you pay that tax. And we think coming up with this policy, we have evaluated our systems, we've evaluated our posture, where Ambazonia is, and we've realized that we can and we have implemented a trial on a trial basis this tax for the last 2 months, and it is time now to fully implement it. And I would urge all multinationals to be binding. It is also a signal to big companies earning at least 20 million a year to understand that you cannot exploit Ambazonian resources and pay them to Cameroon to use to buy weapons in order to commit atrocities, genocide in Ambazonia. They have been reaping huge profits in Ambazonia and paying their taxes to Cameroon. It is time for them to pay their taxes to the rightful owner of the land that they exploit, to the rightful owner of those who pay their bills to them or those who consume their products and services. We are going to enlarge this. We've contacted the first 100 companies and supply them with their official letters to cough up. So we're going to extend this. I think our teams are working very hard in order to extend this to most companies that fall within the threshold to be included in this first phase of a nominal tax.
I would like to make an announcement here to the Ambazonian people. The Governing Council of Ambazonia has launched a special task force, a branch within the ADF, a unit of the ADF, a new unit of the ADF that is specialized to implement this plan on the ground. It's a new force, it's a new unit. It has been empowered and mandated to implement this policy on the territory. That's the announcement for today. Let's move on, Mr. Vice President. Critics, internal critics, have argued that the AGOVC alone cannot design a policy of this magnitude and force it on the territory.
They have a bad dream. I don't think they have a bad dream. And let me explain. When the Ambazonia Defense Forces took down 4 gendarmes in Agbokem, that was in Manu State, we had the Sisiko came out and apologized to the occupier and the genocidal regime of Yaoundé for the death of their forces. They came out and lambasted Dr. Choayaba, the AGOVC, the ADF, for carrying out such attacks. But within years, they adopted self-defense themselves through the training of people in Taraba in Nigeria, but also they accepted. When we launched Amber Coin, they came out and sabotaged and talked lots of nonsense. When we launched the community schools, they weren't for it. So this is not new. Critics from the Kondengi IG, whether they are the ones that are caged in Kondengi or their representatives outside, including their top advisors, because they have no strategy, because they have no vision, because they lack the mindset and the understanding of the revolution, they are very quick in order to dismiss what the Ambazonian Governing Council brings forth. And I can tell Ambazonians, the Ambazonian Governing Council is a laboratory for innovation, creativity, and a strategy in order to liberate homeland, but also impose on homeland something different. By impose, take it literally, please. Impose something different. By impose, we mean be a vanguard that makes sure that what is developed and sustained within the Ambazonia space is something that adheres to the aspirations of the Ambazonian people. It's something that adheres to the reason for which we fight. Therefore, we will make sure that that happens. We saw in the last few days when this policy was announced and through a genuine action by our defense forces to capture the head of Amber Water or Cam Water in the Savannah State, we saw relatives in the likes of Yerima, in the likes of even Professor Anyangwe, somebody whom I respect so much. But as a legal person, I think he lacks implementation ideas. He lacked operationalization of the ideas that he has. Because remember, this is a guy that sat in Zaria as the most elderly statesman, a legal mind, and allowed the creation of an internet government and allowed the creation. He is very good, but as I have discussed before, he can quickly blink because why is an intellectual? He lacks a critical understanding, a critical analysis, and a view of dynamic and malleable situations. This is a critical insight that is required to pursue the Ambazonian War of Independence that we are pursuing. It is also the case that the likes of Yerima would reject a policy, not even in principle, but something that's already been implemented because one of their Kondengi IG or one of their IG fellow is a relative to the person that has been held as the head of Camwater in order to pay their taxes because they have refused to pay their taxes since they received a letter from the Ambazonia Governing Council. As I said, all of these companies have received an official letter and more companies would also receive. And we think that is the right thing to do. That once a policy has been adopted, those that the policy affect are reminded, are contacted in a formal way to tell them their responsibilities under that policy position. It is also the case that these guys are also impostors because if you refuse a liberation tax, even in principle, it means you directly and actively support that even Cameroon companies come to Ambazonia, reap Ambazonias, and then take their profits and their bounty out of Ambazonia. Therefore, you are supporting genocide. You are pro-Cameroon. And as we have said, there is no space for pro-Cameroonians within the Ambazonian space. If you are for federation, if you are for union, for any union with Cameroon, or for one Cameroon as they call it, please move out of Ambazonia now or before we get to Boya, because there'll be no space for you. So it's these guys coming out to put communiques without consulting with the Ambazonian Governing Council on the rationale for doing this. It shows you their mindset. It shows you where they belong, that they're on different lanes. But I know from the retreat in Toronto, we agreed to collaborate, or we agreed to stay mute in issues that do not affect you as an organization, because I don't see how this policy, it rather helps them, but I don't see how this policy affects them. And two, I direct this comment, especially to the IGK, that sometimes during a situation that is dynamic, and sometimes when policies are put forth, they are not put forth for Dr. Nyi's mother or father or brother or uncle or auntie to undermine that policy. That a policy designed for Ambazonia must be respected by every Ambazonia. That is what makes Ambazonia Governing Council strong. That any policy decision that is arrived at, even the critics and those that oppose it internally, would fully support it because majority of the people have agreed that this is the right policy. So the IGK, this statement is for you guys. It's a policy for Ambazonia. You have to. There is no way out. You have to abide by that policy. Yeah.
VP, their argument is that they are the government and they are the one that's supposed to institute such policies. They are the one that's supposed to create such policies. Based on Yerima's audio, he said, the IG did not give any authorization for AGOVC to create such a policy, and he went further to call this policy a kidnapping for ransom scheme.
There is a difference between kidnapping for ransom. Remember, the Tsar of kidnapping or anti-kidnapping Tsar, DDC Capo, instituted anti-kidnapping squad, and that squad is still very active. And once that squad was established and instituted on ground, kidnapping reduced by 60 to 70%, especially in the savannah states. But also the so-called IGO government, they are dim-wit individuals. To be honest, they are dim-wit individuals. Cameroon is a government. Let me remind them, Cameroon is a government. Cameroon has some of the best policies in place, but Cameroon lacks implementation. Cameroon lacks the capacity, the mindset, and the people to implement. Why they might call themselves a government or whatever, but as dim-wit individuals, they lack the capacity, they lack the knowledge, they lack the implementation tools to effect any policy on the ground, be it on schools, be it on self-defense, be it on taxation, which is going to benefit them anyway as Ambazonians and any other Ambazonians. But they lack this critical knowledge, understanding, and the power of resource, the power of process in order to implement a policy, never mind them not being able to even develop such a policy. And I don't see them bringing out any policy in the future. As I said, when we created Amba Coin, what did they do? When we created the education board, what did they do? When we created block by block, what did they do? So these are simply impostures. They might have good intention, don't get me wrong, but good intentions just end at intention level. They must have that critical know-how. They must have that critical resource in terms of people, in terms of means, in terms of narrative as well, to be able to implement those policy positions. To be honest, remember, these are the same guys that gave birth to the pastor IG, and this is a splinter group of the Zaria creation. So these guys are no different from Cameroon. They are no different from the pastor IG or the pigs. So whether it is the Kondinge IG, the IG Care, the pastor IG, these are the same group of people with a little knowledge, a little know-how, and they are not fighting for Ambazonia, to be honest. Even if they were fighting for Ambazonia, they lack the capacity.
They've also made the argument that they've also made the argument that why did the AGOFC not consult with them in the designing of this policy? Why did the AGOFC not consult them? Why did the AGOFC not involve them? They've also made that argument. So they said the reason they are agitating it is because they were not consulted in the conceptualization of the process of the policy.
Anything. Remember, we consulted them during the Amber Coin process. We consulted them during the creation of the education board. But what has made consultation uneasy, what has made collaboration uneasy, is because they have this mindset of entitlement that they are the government, they are supposed to do it. Whereas that entitlement does not come with the know-how or the strategy to do it. Also, it is the case that once everything is done to them, if it's not them, it is not good at all. Whereas for us, any good initiative that pushes the Ambazonian revolution forward, any initiative that punishes Cameroon for its occupation of Ambazonia, any initiative that advances the total independence of Ambazonia, it's welcomed by the Ambazonian Governing Council. They simply want us to consult with them. Whereas we've done that in the past and it hasn't worked because they think they should be in charge of ideas that they didn't create. Remember, if you take an idea that is not of your conceptualization, it will be so difficult for you to implement it. We have consulted them time and again, but we've realized that we are on a different league. It takes them 2 or 3 years to copy what we have enacted. It takes them 2 or 3 years to be able to understand the rationale behind certain policy positions. So we think that this policy is good for Ambazonia. It's going to benefit Ambazonian children going to school. It's going to benefit the Ambazonian people. It's going to provide the public services that Ambazonians need at this time when Cameroon has lost legitimacy. It's going to provide, it's going to fill that gap or that void that is left or that was left by ungovernability. This is a part of the process of rebuilding the regulatory institutions within the Ambazonian space, and it's only going to increase. And I even have bad news for these IGK members. If you collaborate directly or indirectly to enable Cameroon, there will be accountability. There will be accountability in the end for what you did or you didn't do in order to enable colonization. This is a policy position that has been applauded by all Ambazonians. This is a policy position that has been applauded by most of our international partners and even the international community. We saw in the East Timor Revolution, we saw Jonas Savimbi taxing businesses, and it is a national duty to collect taxes, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in North Korea, whether it's in Peru. It is the right of the people to collect taxes for the companies that exploit their resources and their services within their territorial space. Cameroon has legitimacy. Cameroon has lost Ambazonia. Cameroon should leave Ambazonia and allow Ambazonians to govern themselves. And that is what we are doing. We are trying to build institutions in terms of its regulatory, in terms of its normative, but also cohesive institutions, because we are putting all companies on notice. If you haven't received a letter yet, maybe you should contact us so that before your letter comes, you know your tax liability. It is also the case that within all of these multinationals, whether they're Cameroon multinationals, whether they are South African multinationals like MTN, you will have to pay up. We might even, in order to recoup the cost of colonization in Ambazonia, we might even up taxes on Cameroonian companies operating in Ambazonia. So they might not have to pay the same tax rate as those other multinationals from outside of Cameroon. So this is also to tell Cameroon companies that your tax rate would be different, because you have to pay for the genocide that you have perpetrated in Ambazonia. You also have to pay back Ambazonians for all the contributions. Remember, the likes of Cam Water, they collect huge sums of money. Just say 1,000 amber per household for 1,000 household per month. They are reaping 1 billion out of amber every month in terms of profits. They have to plow back some into the community, and this is through this liberation tax. And any company that dodges or avoids tax during the liberation, you would pay double tax at the dawn of Ambazonia.
Now, the Vice President, let's get this very clearly. The revenues from this liberation tax policy are meant to help Ambazonians fill in the gap in terms of the defense gap, the security gap, and to start the process of rebuilding community schools, start to rebuild community health centers, and provide services to the local population. Is that correct?
Totally correct, and it will also help in order to fund vocational schools as well. Remember, most Ambazonians have lost their way through the kind of curriculum that was practiced by Cameroon. So it's not only in health, it's not only in education, it's also in professional training as well. You know, provision of basic services that are required. You know, that is why we are also ordering for Camwater which has been renamed Amber Water, we are not ordering them to pay 10 million Amber. We are also telling them that public water has to be free. No more paying of public water. So in addition to their 10 million Amber, public taps have to be free of charge. The water is coming from underneath Ambazonian soil, and it needs to be used by Ambazonian as a basic necessity of life. It is.
Are you let's VP, please, not just to interrupt you, but I want to ask a critical question, just for clarity of for clarity. Is it that Ambazonia should not pay their private water bills anymore, or you make, or there's a distinct, or you make the distinction is only for public taps?
Ambazonia should pay their water bill. Public taps are free of charge, and they should be free of charge. Public taps are free of charge in every country of the world. So it is pillage, it is daytime armed robbery that Water would be charging for using public taps or public amenities. So Ambazonians should continue to pay their water bills when Water is fully compliant. Means Water pay its annual revenue, its annual liberation tax. It makes public taps free. Then Water can continue to do business in Ambazonia. And this goes same to all other companies, including the electricity company. They have to pay their tax. Once they pay their tax, Ambazonians will be encouraged to continuously use their services. But when they don't pay their tax, Ambazonians will not continue to do so. Remember, we are a pro-business organization. We know the importance and the role of business in community and in provision of jobs and everything else. So it is important that these companies, we allow them to operate in a capitalist manner, but also that they pay their fair share to the government treasury or to the treasury to allow for essential services, to allow for the defense of homeland, allow for the sending of girls to maybe some vocational training, as well as boys to some vocational training, but also for the provision of health centers, for the provision of schools and school sundries, and for all other services that a normal community would require to survive at the bare minimum.
One of the arguments or an accusation that has been levied against the Governing Council of Ambazonia is that the Governing Council of Ambazonia led the Ambazonian people to the CDN retreat in Toronto. And they came out, Ambazonians were very happy. Ambazonians had a rekindled sense of collaboration. And critics are saying the Governing Council of Ambazonia has basically walked out of that spirit of collaboration from the Toronto retreat, because the Governing Council of Ambazonia did not consult any of the groups that went to Toronto. They went by themselves, designed a policy, and then they want to impose that policy, and they want all other groups to accept the policy. So I want to ask you this question. Has the CDN or Ambazonia implying the CDN has become a new centralized collaborative platform?
Actually, no, and vehemently no. It is neither a clearinghouse nor a new centralized system of pursuing the freedom of Ambazonian people. I think all of us, we told the CDN, and the CDN agreed. They are very good people in the CDN. I would like to congratulate them. I would like to appreciate them for the marvelous work they are doing. I think we all agreed that the role of the CDN will be that of a facilitator of collaboration within the Ambazonian movement and the Ambazonian people, but also collaboration between Ambazonian people and the international community. That's their role. They are not a clearinghouse nor a central committee of anything. But also, we agreed that we would collaborate where there is necessity to collaborate. And we made it clear, and I'll make it clear to Ambazonians as well. This is not being bullish. Sometimes I just like to speak the truth the way it is. We will collaborate as far as practically possible. And we said this in the CDN and told the CDN, we said this in the retreat to other movements. But we are capable and determined to go it alone if need be. It might take us time, but we will get there. If we have been able to make the invincible bee to crawl with their knees, we will send the last vestiges of Cameroon out of Ambazonia. We will be Ambazonia that is different from Cameroon. We will be an Ambazonia that would provide an educational system that empowers Ambazonia. We will be for Ambazonia a business system that provides opportunities, that is fair and that is equitable for Ambazonian people. The CDN in itself is just a facilitator. There was no requirement in order to consult with any movement before imposing this tax on something that would have been done. But because we knew we didn't have the implementation mechanisms in place, we had to withhold the implementation of this tax. So the time is right. We have the capacity, companies, all multinational companies, earning at least, making at least 20 million AMBA per year within Ambazonia, that you have to pay up. We have the capability to sanction any defaulters or any tax avoiding company. So Cameroon companies are very good at avoiding taxes. So this is a key warning to those companies. Other companies during our trial period, which lasted for 2 months, I think most multinationals out of Cameroon were willing to pay, or they complied, compared to around only 40% of those from Cameroon, because of this their mentality of colonialism, this their mentality of being arrogant, and it's a warning shot, please.
In view of international diplomacy, how will the international partners of Ambazonia, international partners of AGOVC, how are they responding to this policy?
Oh, it's brilliant. And as I said, part of this policy was developed in conjunction or with consultation of our international partners. Remember, Ambazonia has a guarantor, a state, a European state for that matter. Ambazonia is on course to get a second guarantor. What does a guarantor do? A guarantor sees with you and supports you diplomatically, but also builds your capacity and provides guidance. And sometimes we go to our guarantors to tease ideas out. And the reception within the international community, not only from our guarantors, not only from our friends, but also from the general international community, including those that we met in Canada, they think it is the right thing to do. They agree in principle that it is the right tax, and it has been practiced in Colombia, it has been practiced in East Timor, it has been practiced in Eritrea, it has been practiced in most of the liberation movements or liberation struggles around the globe. It has been practiced in other liberation struggles. It has only been practiced in areas where the forces had control. But we are implementing this in the entire space of Ambazonia, into the entire space. So it has received widespread acclamation, at least in principle, of the idea to tax foreign multinationals in Ambazonia. But also it has confirmed the building of institutions within Ambazonian space. It has also confirmed that we are the leading movement, not only in terms of developing policies, but also making sure that the aspirations of the Ambazonian people are pursued vigorously, but also making sure that Cameroon is denied the claim that it can govern, or that it still has some leverage to govern Ambazonia. This is the first step. To move forward.
Is this policy part of the AGOVC strategy to claim full sovereignty for the Ambazonian people? Is it part of the AGOVC strategy to accept the Ambazonian people's right for self-determination and the right for sovereignty? Is this part of the strategy?
Exactly. One of the rationale for this policy is to show the international community, but also Ambazonians themselves, that they can take charge of their own affairs, that
Yes.
they have come of age, and they can do things and be part of the international system. And that's how the international system works. Every country imposes taxes on businesses within their sphere of influence or within their national territory. So it sends a clear signal to the international community that the Ambazonia Governing Council, Ambazonia, and the Ambazonian people mean business, and that the true leaders of the Ambazonian War of Independence is the Ambazonia Governing Council and the staff and the members and all of those who support or who commit to the vision and the strategies of the Ambazonia Governing Council. It also legitimizes our claim that Cameroon is defeated. It also legitimizes the notion that the invincible ADF is stronger than it was. It also legitimizes our claim that if Cameroon doesn't sit on the negotiation table to discuss the terms of separation, by terms of separation, it's looting of Ambazonia for the last 60 years, it is game over. We will take over Bafoussam and Douala and recoup all the money stolen from Ambazonia from their businesses as well.
Now, you were the leading, you led the Ambazonian people during the CDN retreat. You met some key diplomats from Canada. You met also the top diplomat from the United Kingdom, from Norway, from also you met the Swiss team. You met diplomats from Ireland. You met diplomats, I think, from Belgium as well. I want to ask you, with all these diplomatic meetings, from what came out of the CDN, where are Ambazonians diplomatically in terms of AGOVC policy of targeted diplomacy post the retreat?
Ambazonia became an international contender at the beginning of 2019. And I think the AGOVC made this statement clear. Where we are today, we have severed the umbilical cord, the diplomatic umbilical cord of Cameroon. We have exposed Cameroon lies and gimmicks within the international system. The international system now lacks respect for Cameroon as a whole, whether in terms of its actions, in terms of its words, in terms of its initiatives, or in terms of what it doesn't even do. Our international partners from all of these countries, remember, some of these partners are friends of Ambazonia. Some of them stand for Ambazonia. They have come to the realization that the CDN retreat was a good platform to start building internal synergies. They have come to the conclusion that the Ambazonian people want nothing else but self-determination. And that is the cause, or that's the root cause of this conflict, as clearly articulated and confirmed during the CDN retreat. And we have always been singing this. It is also the case that the international system, through our contacts, are waiting for the resolutions of the CDN retreat, which will be coming out in the next 1 or 2 days. And I think the participants will also hold a plenary session in order to inform Ambazonian people of what happened in the retreat in Toronto, about us coming together. I think the time is ripe for us to come together. But as I said before, the Ambazonia Governing Council will do everything it can to collaborate, to push forth genuine collaboration, not the Zaria, not the DC, not all of the different gimmicks that have happened in the past. If there is the will and the determination of other parties. But as I said as well, we are willing, capable, and determined to push ahead regardless. If our overtures are taken for granted, or if people think that applauding the liberation tax policy of the AGOVC is to give AGOVC favors. That is what all other movements want. They want that they should be at the center, or they should be consulted in order to gain relevance, because leave them alone. They have no strategy. They have no creativity, no innovation, no good minds within the organizations to come up with these policies. The Ambazonian Governing Council is a laboratory for ideas because they have the great people working for them. They have minds that don't sleep. They always think of how Ambazonia will be free and erect systems, democratic, economic, social systems that reflect our socio-cultural being. I think it is time for Ambazonia to support this liberation task, which is being supported by Ambazonians supporting it, or the naysayers, or those who oppose anything that the Ambazonian Governing Council does, but would then go behind to try to do something similar, which would never work as we know it. I think for the last 5 years, the Ambazonian people have entrusted the leadership of this Ambazonian War of Independence in the Ambazonian Governing Council because they have what it takes. They have authentic leaders and authentic people working, and every policy position that they develop is for the interest of the Ambazonian people, is to show Cameroon that you have no say in the affairs of Ambazonia, is to tell Cameroon to pack out its last military personnel in bunkers and in armor cars, which we will blow them up as time goes on.
Let me bring you back to the policy and we round up the conversation about the policy. Some have argued that the subject under Ambazonia, under ADF custody, that was arrested because of failure to comply with the liberation tax, they have argued that he's an Ambazonian and therefore he shouldn't be arrested. So in my interpretation of this, what they are also saying is that because Atanganji Paul is an Ambazonian, Atanganji Paul should not be arrested. What they are saying is that because Dion Gute, the colonial prime minister, is an Ambazonian, when he visits the territory, the fighters should not go after his convoy. What they are also arguing is that because the parliamentarians have been recruited by Cameroon, imposed on the Ambazonian people, centers recruited in Cameroon, imposed on Ambazonian people, those people should not be the target of the liberation arrest. What do you make of this? Is this not some kind of a confusion for people that said they want independence?
It's not even a confusion. These people are planted within us to derail, to sabotage, and to pursue Cameroon's agenda. The policy, any policy position or any rule within the state applies irrespective of your relationship with the head of that department. Some of these people, remember what Cameroon has done in Ambazonia is that in some key positions, Cameroon has replaced Francophones with slaves Ambazonians to run Cameroon's agenda. They will all be picked up. And for the record, Ambazonia Governing Council doesn't care who pays up the tax. The tax has to be paid. Ambazonia Governing Council doesn't care who is running the organization or the multinational that has tax liability. They will pick them up, whether they're Ambazonians or not. And their case is even made worse, that an Ambazonian slave is used to perpetrate genocide or to rip Ambazonians dry of their resources and then refuses to pay the liberation tax. So Ambazonians would be upheld more vigorously to respect the liberation tax payment than even a foreigner, because you as an Ambazonian is supposed to be the one to abide by the rules of the land first and foremost. And if you are being used and you accept and you know that by Cameroon in order to perpetrate genocide, how do they perpetrate genocide? They repatriate all the payments, the monthly payments, back to Cameroon to use to strategize on how to continue its colonialism, its burning down of houses, of villages, its killing of our people. So they are in the worst situation. He will be kept in custody until the full amount is paid for this year. And if it's next year they don't pay, he's still there. He will be taken back into custody. And any company executive, whether Ambazonia or not, will be taken. The law is made for everybody. In a future Ambazonia, nobody will be above the law, irrespective of your relationship with or without the law.
And so it's also been said that because he's an Ambazonian, basically it's a class system they want to erect, that the elites, the colonial elites, have privileges even during the liberation. The colonial elites do not have to pay their fair share, or because they run agencies of the colonial states, they do not have to pay their fair share. Only the common Ambazonian person should be responsible for the liberation. This is pathetic. Let me move you to the next segment. In the last 3 weeks, the Ambazonian people have lost 2 great generals on the ground. Yesterday, a general was killed in the state of Bui. About a week and a half ago, General Commando was killed in the state of Momo. A few days or weeks before they were ambushed and assassinated, both generals made public audios denouncing the instrumentalization, the manipulation coming from the Splinter IG group. They denounced the fact that the Splinter IG group uses their actions to raise public funds in the form of drafts, but they receive nothing in material support, in training support, in health support. And the moment they make this public pronouncement denouncing these people, and that they will going forward they will pay their allegiance and their loyalty to the Ambazonian flag, they are disarmed, ambushed, and assassinated. Is this not concerning? Are you not worried with this trend?
We are not worried, but we are paying attention to it, because this is not new. These are people that were implanted. This is Cameroon in disguise. Remember, a genocidal regime would do everything and implant your own people to push its own agenda. I think there is an adage that somebody cannot come into your house and do harm if somebody within your house doesn't open the door for that person. It is the same thing. These are guys that were implanted for a specific mission. And if you look at their track record in the last 5 years, they have been pushing Cameroon's agenda. They are heading for Yaoundé. They are heading for Meka, maybe. They are not heading for Boya. These are people that think that they can feed fat on Ambazonian blood. When General Commando, when Cross and I, the big anti-kidnapping SAR on the ground, when our general in Bui, the fall, it means nothing to these guys. It goes to show you, as I said before, that the problem in this revolution, the infighting, is not between the Egg of Sea and any other movement. The infighting is within the Zaria creation. That's why I hold many people, including the Professor Anyangwe, to be responsible for that, because they sat down and created a system that cannot hold. Since the center cannot hold, you have the IG care, the IG pastor, the scope, and so on. So the infighting is within them. The egg of C has always been the egg of C, and we've extended a hand to all of these movements in good faith. We have sent our top officials to attend their initiatives or whatever they organize in good faith. But they have used it as a platform to project irrelevance, to project power that they don't have. When time will come, they will know who has power. When time will come, they and Cameroon will know who controls Ambazonia. And by these steps, the liberation tax is one of those bold steps to move towards that control and coordination of the affairs of Ambazonia by Ambazonians themselves. It is a tax that every company earning a particular threshold must pay. It's a tax that does not know whether you are an Ambazonian leading that company or a foreigner. It is a tax that does not know classes within society. It's a tax that will be paid across the board, and there will be no elites. Remember, we said Ambazonia will not be buried in the same system as Cameroon, with some elites, with some people knowing people in offices, and they will avoid paying taxes or avoid the arm of the law. Ambazonia system will be based on the full application of the common and traditional law system. It will be based on equal representation within the courts of law.
What advice do you have for those generals that are not directly under the command and control of the ADF, based on these scary trends taking place on the ground?
The single advice I'll give to them: these guys are not working for your interest. They are working to kill you, despite the sacrifices that you are making. Leave them to live another day, or stay with them to die early. There are so many cases, from the Chacha to the Smalley to and so on, that these guys are responsible. Even to the rendition of the Calabar, of our Calabar fighters, the rendition of the Taraba fighters from Nigeria to Cameroon. They were the handiwork, and we have evidence for that. That's why we are saying there will be time for accountability. Everybody would answer for what he or she did during the revolution, whether they did it knowingly or unknowingly. And we have evidence for all of that. The time will come. But also, for those who are sitting on the fence and refusing to commit to their own freedom, and they are building houses in Cameroon, in Ambazonia, they are sending containers. Your own tax is on the way. We are building a database. You would hear from us officially of your tax liabilities. I hear.
Thank you very much for that announcement. I want to ask you this, VP. About 2 weeks ago, the Governing Council of Ambazonia graduated the first batch of Ambazonian children through the Egg of Sea community schools. The first batch of Ambazonian children that attend Ambazonian community nursery schools. What are your plans for those that have graduated? For those children?
Our curriculum of education, as I said, is to empower these children who are going to school. They will continue. Graduating from elementary and primary school is not the end. for us is to move forward to the next ladder and use some of this tax money to create vocational institutions, but also your normal educational institutions so that they can continue their journey. We are also discussing with international partners in order to accredit some of the courses, especially as they move from elementary, from primary to secondary education, so that when they graduate, they can have certificates, knowledge, and skills that are of international standard and recognized by international organizations. Without going into detail, you know how these guys sabotage. We are working with international organizations for accreditation of not only professional courses, but also vocational courses, so that when our children graduate from school, they are not a liability to their family. They can stand on their own feet, they can think critically, and they can be of value to themselves and society. And this is what we are doing. When we don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but this is at advanced stage. The education board is working with international partners, and our accreditations of the different courses, whether vocational or professional or academic, would be announced when that happens. And I thank the education department for the job that they are doing. I think they're doing a great job. As I said, the AIG of C has talented members that work day in, day out to make sure that the aspirations of the Ambazonian people are achieved. The work day in, day out selflessly. They are not doing it for any ulterior motive. They are not doing it for any person. Say like other people are doing, or other movements are doing it to push Cameroon's agenda. They are doing it for the sole interest of Ambazonia, to make sure that we bequeath to the next generation an Ambazonia that is different from what we inherited.
I want to ask you this. The Governing Council of Ambazonia was a champion of women's rights and equality of women within our society. In the future of Ambazonia and within the liberation struggle, what role would you want our women to play?
Women have been, and I like that, an integral part of policy development. Women have been an integral part of implementation of policies within the AIG of C, and women have been an integral part of the triad approach. Even in defense, on the ground, you have women soldiers. In diplomacy, women are very active. In community mobilization, women are very active. A future Ambazonia would be one that values women on equal power with men, would be an environment that offers opportunity, equal opportunity to both boys and girls, men and women, so that they can derive their full potential. There are the women in AIG of C, most of you don't know, who are at the forefront of our triad approach. And in the last 2 months, we have recruited more women, especially into the diplomatic team. So as our diplomacy will be moving forward, you would likely see more women. And this is the kind of Ambazonia want to see. The way the AIG of C is run in a replica of what we expect the future Ambazonia to be. So we have a conveyor belt of leaders, and among those leaders are very active women and girls that the Ambazonia Governing Council is building so that the future state represents the sociological makeup of the people of Ambazonia, and that women's place would be sacrosanct within the constitution, and not only in writing but practiced, and that equality and diversity of both sexes is upheld at the highest level, and that opportunities are provided for the girl child as far as practically possible, so that they can pursue their full potential.
While the studio prepare for us to take calls from the public, a few calls for you to engage directly with the public, take their questions and provide answers or clarity. I want to ask you this: for all the soldiers on the ground, for all our mothers, for those in the refugee camps, those in La République du Cameroon colonial concentration camps in terms of prisoners of war, what words of encouragement do you have for them?
We have come this far because of your sacrifices. The buyer and seller, the farmers, all those struggling on ground zero, we appreciate your commitment. We appreciate your observance of Country Sunday. We appreciate your contributions to your own freedom. For those languishing in the dungeons of Cameroon, we appreciate your sacrifices. We appreciate your honor and your determination to keep your spirits high. Why in the worst of situations, because Cameroon has the worst jails on earth. We have advanced more than what you see. We are in a better position. And this advancement in the revolution is to make sure that you come home to a free homeland, and that when you are liberated, you would enjoy what Ambazonia has to offer. We understand the pains that you go through, especially in jail or in exile as a refugee in a different country. Time is coming when you sing, "Hail, hail, hail, land of glory." Time will come when you sing, "Land of promise, land of honey." It is this Ambazonian spirit that is burning in you, that is also burning in us, to make sure that we achieve the objectives for which we started this fight. And we are on course to do so. We have advanced that much far. Cameroon is defeated. What you find are just the last vestiges of Cameroon within Ambazonia. And in the coming months, in the coming years, Ambazonia will gain its total freedom. And sometimes, total freedom does not necessarily mean that all countries recognize you. They are in the little steps, like imposition of liberation tax, building of institutions, schools, hospitals, community centers, vocational centers, providing farm tools, and so on. That begins the process of rebuilding our state according to our own specificities. They are these gestures that portray to the international community and to the naysayers in Cameroon as well, and within Ambazonia, that Ambazonia has come to stay. Ambazonia forever, ever.
All right. Now, the lines are open for everyone who has a question. You need clarity on this policy or something relating to diplomacy, or there is maybe you have a comment you want to make to the vice president. We'll take 5 calls because of the constraint of time. So the lines are open. My fellow Ambazonians, the vice president for governing council of Ambazonia, I want just tell Wuna, he come out now for the Atlantic states. Mr. Vice President come out for the state of Lebialem, and that means if it speak the Bangwa language, any person we want call, some person do already there for line we want call. So if you call,
power on.
If you talk for Igbo,
Bluetooth pairing.
For Igbo talk, if you talk for, let's take this call from the Netherlands. Metro Nikov, go ahead and ask your question or your comment to the Vice President.
Yeah, good evening from the Netherlands. And thank you very much for bringing on board Dr. Nyi for this clarification that he's brought forth to the Ambazonian public. So yeah, I thank you very much, Dr. Nyi, for enlightening Ambazonian on this policy. You know, we are at a war. And when a new policy is implemented, I think not everybody will be on board. And I thank the AIG officer for this policy, and it's geared towards our complete and total liberation. So my one question first is, what are the policies put in place by the AGOVC so as to facilitate the payment of these liberation taxes in a very, very transparent and, genuine way that it shouldn't create some degree of confusion amongst our people? And secondly, what about the groups that are not under AGOVC and do not render account to AGOVC? So what are the mechanisms that is being arranged or put in place so all these things should not create a lot of confusion back at home and then maybe escalate the entire policy into like being seen as no chaos? Thank you very much, Dr. Tony.
Thank you very much. We'll take another question and then you answer both questions. Let's take this second question, this second call.
Thank you very much. Second call.
Comrade El Dorado from the Netherlands. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, okay. Hello, PS. Good evening. And my special thanks to the Vice President.
You're not very clear. Come closer. Yes. Come closer to your phone. You speak. You're a little bit further from away from your phone.
Okay, PS. I am saying that thank you very much for welcoming me for this call, and my greetings to the Vice President. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly. Right on.
Okay, that's fine. Before I go, I am an AGOVC member, but before I go to my question, I would like to throw more light on the previous caller who mentioned that what are the transparent means of making sure that everybody see into it that this liberation tax is a fair game and it's something that people should not fight against it and instead commit to it. I mean, because you mentioned about importers and other companies. And secondly, I have a very big concern to this fighters issue, the infighting. How do we do to make sure that the AGOVC and the ADF distance themselves from all this infighting on the other side of the camp? Because, our general, General Capo, was also present during the joint conference that were made by the Ground Zero fighters at the Boy, where, just few weeks later, they've picked one of them and assassinated him. How do we know that they are not coming to us then after? And then my last question is, regarding the delegate that was arrested, why was he not displayed in a more professional way that the ADF operate, like not display him in the bush? Are we sure that all his human rights are being respected? That is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, VP, go ahead, take these few calls before we move to other calls.
Thanks so much, Comrade Nico and Comrade El Dorado, for your questions. I will start with Comrade Nico. It is the case that there is a central system that has been created under the Ambazonia Defense Forces that will be responsible for this. There is no two tax departments in any country. There's only one tax department. So anybody paying their taxes must go through that central system or that central organ within the AGOVC that would receive the taxes. Would also make it clear to our boys and girls on the ground who has paid, who hasn't paid, and we also, as we've said, when companies pay, we've always rendered, but we are not going to render public certain things in order to expose other confidential stuff to Cameroon. To our remember, Cameroon also watches ACN, or also watches Ambazonia Governing Council media outlets. So one, there is a central implementation organ, and all taxes go to one place, the revenue in every country. So any fighter or anyone, any company, anywhere within Ambazonia would have to contact the Ambazonia Governing Council if you want to make your payments, So please, you don't have to pay to a second party. And the outcome of this liberation tax will be made known to Ambazonia on a regular basis, but it will be made known on a case by case and bearing in mind certain sensitive issues regarding that. The trial period made us know of some of the sensitive issues. There are certain companies that are paying their taxes, but they wouldn't really want their names to be out. Remember, I said we had a trial period for this. So also, what are we doing with other fighters and other movements? There'll be further consultations with other movements, especially those that we met through the CDN retreat, because we agreed that we'll further collaboration. But we'll only consult and continue the consultation with movements that agree in principle to this taxation system. There is no point continuing consultations with movements that reject the liberation tax. So at least agree in principle, and then there is room for consultation, because the tax has come to stay. You better just align behind it. That's one thing. In terms of Comrade Edorado, as I said, the infighting in the revolution, this is how Cameroon is. Whether it is the PIX IG or the Kick IG or the Zaria Mafia, they work on manipulation. All the infighting has come from their camp. Most of the deaths has come from their camp, their generals. They themselves putting their generals for Cameroon to kill, because that's their mission. So for us, each block is very important. Why would I support that the block in the BLM stays up? Because if the block in the BLM goes down, it exposes other blocks. So while we stay away from their infighting, we know that the lives of every general on ground matters, whether they fight for Ambazonia Governing Council or not. As long as they are fighting for the flag, their life matter. That is why the ADF went in to protect or provide some guidance to General Nopiti. It's critical, because he's fighting for the flag. He's not fighting for the Ambazonia Governing Council, and his block matters. That is the strategy of block by block. It is also the case that we would, in terms of delegating a professional body, as I said, I think your second question, Edorado, ties in with the first question about implementation, that there is an organ to collect all of this. And at the beginning, most of the taxes, whether it's on your imports or you being on the fringes and building your house back home, most of the taxes at the beginning will be nominal. But our experts would sit down and look at an equitable tax system in the years for subsequent years. But for current years, when they come into operation, will go on a nominal basis, with nominal taxation. So you would receive a formal notice of your taxability.
Power on.
To be proactive,
Bluetooth
you can
zero.
contact us to pay your taxes before you are
Bluetooth
formally
connected.
notified.
We have time for 3 more calls. We've taken 2 calls. We have 3 more calls. So the Vice President, you've answered the call from Mr. Nikov from the Netherlands. Let's take this call from Ground Zero. Comrade from Ground Zero, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. Yeah, I just want to greet the Vice President. Yeah, I just want to greet the Vice President.
Go ahead, sir. He's listening.
And yeah. Who do you want your Munjala Gumbian?
Mbunkonte. Yes. Okay. But you Bella Cameroon te Bobby Bon Donkey. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, sir.
Okay, Bubun Conte. He's saying that we should keep moving. So majority of Ambazonians, I made a cross section of calls around, and people contacted me, just like our caller from Ground Zero. He's from the same state like myself, Lebi Alem. All Ambazonians are in support of these taxes. By Ambazonia, I mean pure Ambazonians. Those Ambazonians are against these taxes are implanted by Cameroon. So majority of Ambazonians want this tax to go ahead because Ambazonians are compliant people. So if you see any Ambazonian that is not compliant, know that they are happy slaves, but their place is not in Ambazonia. Thank you.
Good afternoon, comrade from Atlanta, the United States. Go ahead, sir. Oh, madam.
Yeah, I just want to greet the vice president.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just want to greet the vice president and tell you guys I'm so encouraged with what you guys are doing.
The vice president is listening. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are a true Ambazonia, true son of the soil.
So, yeah.
All right. We have time for one more call. We've taken 4 calls so far. Who will be the lucky last caller? Oh, all right. This is a special call from one of our uncle, a father, a great patriot. Go ahead. I will not mention his name. Go ahead, doctor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are very delighted that you have called. So go ahead with your question or comment to the Vice President of Ambazonia Governing Council.
Good afternoon. And good afternoon to the Vice President.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
afternoon, Doc.
Doctor, we are listening.
I just called to congratulate. Good afternoon. It's nice listening to you.
All right. You are
like
from Canada.
I just called to say, this issue of people saying the liberation tax is this or that. Sure.
Doctor, we are listening. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lack of understanding because, like I said some time ago, some of these things you don't know what is going on. Yeah, some of these things, once you don't know what is going on, let people who know what is going on stand in front and do things. I don't know, I getting the thing going on and off.
No, for us it's very clear. We can hear you clearly, sir. There's no interruption.
Yeah, rather than sit back there and just be criticizing without any base.
Ambazonia, una di here?
Okay.
Una di here? Pa don't talk. Pa talk say make the policy go ahead because AGOV see they know what they do and for liberate the people them. Pa, thank you very much,
Basically,
doctor.
that's it.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Doc. It is the case, as I said, sometimes when we say like this, I think people think that we are trying to be bullish or we are trying to be proud. No. Take it that by nature, by God, or by the time was ripe, that God brought the minds that are in AGOV C together to liberate you and fall behind the leadership of Dr. Cho Ayoba so that you can see the future homeland. It is
go ahead, caller. You are the last caller so that the Vice President can round up his closing remarks. All right, sir. VP, we are very delighted having you. You've heard what...
Power off.
the doctor in Canada has said. It's a great patriot, one of our strong pillars here. It's a renowned scholar, someone who understands the international system. So, in conclusion, what would you want to say to the Ambazonian people regarding this policy, the liberation of Ambazonia, and the future of Ambazonia?
Thank you so much, PS, for hosting me today in the interview. Thank you, Ground Zero. Thank you, the diaspora, for watching. Thank you, our refugees and those of our comrades that are incarcerated illegally in Cameroon jails. The liberation tax is to empower you, Ambazonia. The liberation tax is to show you who is in charge, and you have been in charge for quite a while. It is one of those steps that continue to legitimize the ownership of your land, that continues to send a signal to friends of Ambazonia and to foes of Ambazonia within the international sphere of who is in charge of Ambazonia. It is one of those taxes that tears Cameroon, that fully pack out. Cameroon is packing out, but Cameroon needs to go as quickly as possible. It also tells you the road that you have traveled as Ambazonians in the last 5-6 years when this active phase of the revolution started. I know we've been fighting Cameroon for the last 60 years, but the active phase only started in 2017. We have made the spaces ungovernable. We have shattered the mantra that Cameroon was superior militarily. When you rose from nowhere with simple tree branches to having pops, we are going to build the next generation, which is in the making, of pops that would smoke them out of bunkers. Cameroon administrators, who are now military administrators, can only move in Ambazonia in armored cars. But we have bad news for you. Our next generation of pops will make you to go back in empty body bags. You get lost in Ambazonian forest. Cameroon has lost respect in the international system. Through your community mobilization, your outreach, through your defiance, you have shown Cameroon that you have come of age, Ambazonian, in order to take your destiny into your own hands. You have shown Cameroon who is the true owner of Ambazonia, and that this generation would fight as if the whole revolution depended on them, and that this generation, it is up to us to end Cameroon's tyranny and genocide in Ambazonia, and that this generation would not hand over Ambazonia to the next generation in the state we met it. We will hand over a better, a more prosperous Ambazonia, a more educated Ambazonia, and a vibrant Ambazonia to the next generation. We will hand over Ambazonia to the next generation that is respected in the international system, that is taken seriously in international affairs, that is taken seriously sociologically, because we are people of dignity. We are people that we hold to our true values, and that the AGOC will provide that authentic leadership that we have been providing, even though we were made to believe that we're the bad apples within, whereas the bad apples themselves were the ones telling you that the AGOC was the problem. No, the problem is the Zaria creation. The problem is the IG of the pastors. The problem are those impostors that make like Cameroon. You have movements with 1 or 2 people, and then the thing shouting on social media. Why they shout on social media? I thank you all, Ambazonians, those of you that have committed. Some of you commit anonymously. And before I came on air today, I got the best news that one comrade has committed 10,000 amber towards the defense of homeland. I was elated. So some of you commit and you don't come online to shout. That is very good. For those of you who are not committing, who are standing on the sidelines and think that you can run business as usual, it is time for you to commit to your own freedom, because we will be coming after you. There will be accountability for everyone. For those of you that think that social media, the new age of technology, will be used to tarnish people's reputation, Ambazonian people, I believe in them, because they have been able to realize who are the true people fighting for their independence, and that's egg of sea. They've come to realize who is their true leader, is the leader of our liberation, Dr. Choayaba. They've come to realize which fighting force really stands for total defense of the homeland, the Ambazonia Defense Forces and other sister forces that are aligned to it and that obeys its code of conduct. They have come to realize that every strategy that we make has a positive rationale for the pursuit of Ambazonian sovereignty. And that sovereignty is not just abstract. We will make it practical in all its phases. We will be the institutions that matter for Ambazonia, that promotes an Ambazonia to be of value to his or herself, but also to its community and its nation. An Ambazonia that you'll be proud because you can move from Menchum to Fako in a fast train in less than 2 hours to work and then go back home in the evening. An Ambazonia that will equip its citizens with the know-how, with the skills and the knowledge to be part of the global system. Multinational companies operating in Ambazonia earning 20 million amber a year. The time has come for you to contact the Ambazonia Governing Council and pay your nominal tax, or we will come to you if we haven't yet. All defaulters will be held accountable. It is time for you to pay to the rightful owner of the resources and the services that you exploit in Ambazonia. It is time for you to pay back to the community that you reap profits from. That is the normal operation in all countries in the world, that there is a tax system so that Cameroon can stop its economic terrorism, whereby it reaps profits from amber and uses that in order to bankroll its war machine. Time has come for Cameroon to go. You either go or we will kick you out, and you pay for all the 60 years of colonialism. You pay for all the 60 years of genocide. Any negotiation with Cameroon is about repayments of all the raping of our economic system, of our children, the killing, the burning of our people. That is the only negotiation that Ambazonia Governing Council would engage in with Cameroon. We are not going to negotiate on anything else but on terminating Cameroon's occupation and its payment of all the raping of our people, the killing of our people for the last 60 years. I hail. Thanks so much. Hail.
Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the interview. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Comrade Asu. You are a great man.
It's because of giants like you. We are standing on shoulders of giants like you. It's a privilege. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
My fellow Ambazonians, you've heard from your Vice President. You've heard from the great man who helped to build institutions, to generate talent, to find talent. As we said earlier in our opening statements, the essence of leadership is to solve problems. The essence of leadership is to create solutions. The essence of leadership is during tough times to have the capacity to pivot and innovate. This is what the Ambazonia Governing Council is about. This is what the liberation tax policy is about. To solve the problem, to end this phase of our liberation struggle, to generate enough revenue that will give the Ambazonian people the capacity to start the rebuilding of our community schools, our health centers, vocational training centers, to ramp up the building up of specialized forces. The liberation tax is the first step to reclaim the sovereignty of Ambazonia. It's a great policy. It's a good policy at the right time, at the right moment, for the right people that have made the ultimate determination to have a free homeland. We understand the naysayers. We understand the lazy ones. We understand beggars of freedom. We understand those that do not want to do the work, and they are waiting for the world to come and give them freedom on a platter of gold. As the leader said, it's not going to be a walk in the park. We are determined to make tough choices, to make tough decisions, to secure what our people are asking for. This is a tough choice. That's what leadership is about. I want to thank the President of Governing Council of Ambazonia, and I want to send special greetings to the Supreme Commander of Ambazonia Defense Forces, General Efan, for the extraordinary leadership he's displaying on the ground. Once more, the Ambazonia Defense Forces have launched a new unit of the ADF. The General has commissioned that unit, and they have given a special mandate. That special unit, the Liberation Task Force Unit, its role is to implement, monitor, to make sure that defaulters of this policy will be arrested anywhere across the 13 states of Ambazonia. The Governing Council of Ambazonia will not sit, wait, and watch why our children are being killed, our mothers are being raped, our fathers are being picked up and transferred to the concentration camps of Cameroon. The liberation, the struggle of Ambazonia is not a political game for opportunists. That's why we're taking tough decisions and making tough choices and carrying out bold actions to make sure that we end Cameroon occupation of Ambazonia. The time is now. We must do whatever it takes to move the Ambazonian people forward. This is what this policy is about. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. What people them, when I stay fine, may God bless all una. When I don't hear from una vice president today, you don't even talk today, talk or country talk. For all the people them, wait for the past, they be agree say the future leader of Ambazonia, he go come out now for the southern zone. I get good news for the historians. The Governing Council of Ambazonia, the groom, the next leader of Ambazonia from that southern zone. The Vice President of Governing Council of Ambazonia, he come on for the southern zone. If not the agreement that they been making for the past, they want to start for prepare on ourselves. We go create a country with corruption all the day. We go create systems where they go work fine for the benefit of the common man, of the common person, not be only for the benefits of the elites. We'll get the best of the best among we. So my people, shake in no day. Camwater, they don't pay 50% of their 10 million. We'll call on Camwater, they get a few more days to comply. Now law, the tax force, it is on the ground. They would do the work. I think kuna plenty. Would they talk for una small time? Make every person get a good weekend. Una stay safe. Una stay strong. Una stay committed. Over the coming days, the Ambazonia Governing Council will go expand this policy for include all Ambazonians them, all contributing them, all Ambazonia business people them, even the one that they did for diaspora. This policy, not just the beginning, this policy will be expanded for include every single Ambazonian. The time don't reach for every person for make sure say it play your own part and pay your own fair share for we for end Cameroon occupation of Ambazonia, where people don't suffer for far too long. No time, no day again for play. May God bless all now. I be my brother Asu, and I be the host, the co-host, the host, and sometimes the co-host of the interview. May God bless all man.
tuned on ACN TV. We will be right back.